Wonderful.
Right. Let me just start off with the politicians in a sense. And Sachin, if I could just ask you a question. I think we see lots of social entrepreneurs being able to do what government agencies cannot do. Reach the people who need services the most. Be able to provide services in manners that government agencies just cannot do. Is it something that they have, or is it the way people react to government agencies that prevent them from doing these things?
Because I think it's a bit of both, because the government can do what it is supposed to be doing, which is make policies and programs and allocate budgets and set the framework in place. But to my mind, I think India is a very, very large country, and what sometimes very difficult to achieve is the last mile access. And I think there, people like these and other people who work on the grassroots level are much more equipped. And obviously, these are all human beings who have the tendency to go out there and work selflessly and soldier on despite the obstacles that you have. I might add from sometimes the bureaucrats and the governments. I think those are the kind of combinations that are required. And I think it's not just the government alone which can achieve most things. It's not about the central government, the state government. It has to be a partnership of entrepreneurs like them who really will take on the initiative and be able to surmount the challenge.
Yashodhara, would you agree with that? And sometimes are we unkind when we say that the government and bureaucrats and politicians can never achieve the social entrepreneurs that they do? Are they similar success stories we just perhaps over highlight?
Oh, I think that the government had set out to do what was called the panchayat system. And the panchayat system was a bottom-up situation. But the problem is that when you have a bottom-up situation, there are so many checks and balances and so many buts and ifs and so many criteria to be met in that panchayat system that it turns out to be not a bottom-up but a top-down. And because of that, there is a little bit of a systems failure somewhere, which is where NGOs, self-help groups, these are the situations that come in because they take up the vacuum of that last mile that Sachin was talking about.
Top-down versus bottom-up. Would you agree with that? Is that the reason why so many social entrepreneurs are able to succeed?
I think it's a broader problem for top-down and bottom-up. The whole paradigm of development is that people are being empowered, as you said, to look after their own life. You have to let them enable them to look after their own life. So the seed of freedom that development is the spark in the individual. So it has to be bottom-up. However, the models that we have of doing things on a big scale are always top-down. The government or big corporation is top-down. And that's where the clash starts to come. When you want to magnify, multiply, or scale up, as you use the term, these sort of efforts, because these are very good. They are like Schwab said examples, but we need a million times as much as this. How do we organize to have a million times as much? Unfortunately, we start thinking top-down to say how we're going to connect them, organize them, and resource them, and so on. So I think we really are struggling to find a way to connect bottom-up and top-down in some form that works together.
Vikram, may I just, I know you're running a tight ship today, and I know that
it's not that tight, don't worry.
But it's a very small example I'm going to give of something that happened 1 month back in a place called Riva in Madhya Pradesh. We have something called the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. And in that, every family has to be employed for 100 days. It's a very, very good scheme. Now, what happens is that it's a bottom-up program, which is exactly what he was talking about, that it has to spread. So here is the government who has given you this big spread all over India. Every family in the rural area has to be employed, in BPL has to be employed for 100 days. Okay, so what do? They, in the panchayat, decide that you're going to build a water body, a lake. They go ahead and build it. They go to the Prashasan, which is the collector, and say, okay, we built the lake, we built the water body, now give us the money that it cost to build it. So he says, no. Did you get a technical sanction? Did you get Sarpanch's permission? Did you get the various permissions that needed to be done? They said, no, we didn't. Well, you should have been aware of what the criteria is. The NGOs got into it and said, no, they should be paid because they had and done this labor, and now they should be paid. He said, no, I'm sorry, I have the criteria, I have to do it accordingly. They went to the Supreme Court, and they fought this case in the Supreme Court. It's only about a month back that this all had happened. But then the Jila Prashasana decided, used their own vivek, used their own, and said, these guys are right. If we keep stymieing and saying, okay, this is the criteria and it has to be done, we should go to the site, see if they've done the work, and sometimes go out of the box and give them the money that is supposed to be done. So, there you go.
It's great that cases like that are happening, but I think I just want to take on from something that Arun said. This has to be, each of you is touching lives, is touching thousands of lives, hundreds of thousands of lives. But at the end of the day, if you have to reach 500 billion people, either we need 100,000, 500,000 social entrepreneurs like you, or we need to figure out ways of scaling up the model. I wonder whether any of you would have thoughts as to how these models can be scaled.
Thank you.
Especially the engagement of the service providers with the poor. And over there, around that, a lot of myths have been created, and that has led to subsidies, it has led to certain mindsets that the poor are not willing to take. But I think that if there can be platforms where these engagements can be facilitated, then from that, both from the service provider's point of view, service user's point of view, you will get creative, innovative solutions which can then be scaled up and replicated. That is what I would say.
Feel free, by the way, to come in on if you have any comment to make about somebody is saying.
Sure. If I look at my own industry in terms of rural electricity or rural solar or rural energy services, I go back to the example of what the government did in terms of creating the agricultural revolution. What it cleverly went about was creating through NABARD, creating the NABARD then putting caps on Grameen banks in rural India, the regional rural banks and other financial institutions, that X percentage should be for agricultural financing. A similar cap, if it's done for sustainable energy, 5% for end users and 2% for working capital for entrepreneurs to take it up as a business. Now as an entrepreneur in the rural area, to take a business in sustainable energy, the banks will not give him loan because they are not aware of the technology. If NABARD, RBI, NABARD start working on a large scale, just like how agricultural financing took, how the agricultural revolution took place in our country, it's just a small percentage.
So really it's awareness.
Absolutely. Awareness
and awareness from the government also downwards.
Absolutely. And financial institutions are key in our country. I mean, absolutely.
I just wanted to add what Harish mentioned, that in India we have with IRDA, Insurance Regulatory Authority, and Reserve Bank of India, they have this priority like sector lending. So they have to do these institutions have to do the priority sector lending and insurance to the rural population, to the marginalized population. And this helped us actually to get the scale with Mandeshi. And that was that HSBC bank, I mean all the banks have to do 18% of their lending to the marginalized community or a low income group. And this helped us to bring on the table a win-win situation. HSBC was asking us to have be asked as a refinance arrangement and partnership with that, with HSBC in lending. And we agreed, and we also saw that it gives us a bargaining position. So we requested that we will take a loan from you for refinance, but you have to invest in those clients. And we requested them that why don't you sponsor a business school for this client. And so it became a win-win situation where the investment comes from the CSR of HSBC, and it doesn't come just as a grant or just giving the subsidy. It comes more in a form of investment, and that gives a power to these women to become a client of these global institutions, not only just client, but we make them accountable